and a thriving business community. You want to show me a thriving community, I'll show you a thriving business community. You want to show me a struggling community, I'll show you a struggling business community. So,
welcome to the Talk Chamber, a production of the Greater Memphis Chamber. The Talk Chamber is the podcast for the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. This mic is powered by Ortho South, world-class orthopedic care across the Mid-South. Today's episode features Bobby White, the Chief Government Affairs Officer here at the Greater Memphis Chamber. Bobby, thank you so much for coming on the Talk Chamber, and welcome back.
Okay, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I was seeing all of the lovely guests coming on, and I was just wondering, wow. I helped to kick it off, but then I was wondering, might I get invited back at some point just to, we'll see what happens. And I was just so glad to be invited back.
We are glad to have you back. Today's topic is a little bit different than what we talked about before on, I guess,
absolutely,
our second episode of the podcast.
Call me a forerunner. I was a trailblazer of sorts when it comes to that. And congratulations to you, Taylor Ann. The podcast is doing quite well. We had so many wonderful people coming in and out of this office. I'm sorry, this podcast studio, and coming out in and out of the Chamber's office. The podcast studio is actually located in our office. Congratulations to you. And looking at the wonderful, we have sponsor.
I know.
I don't know if you're familiar with this reference, but for years and years, Ernie Johnson, Kenny the Jet Smith, Charles Barkley, the Hall of Famer, and Shaquille O'Neal, they would do Inside the NBA. Mm-hmm. And at the end of every show, they would do and this segment sponsored by nobody. As Emmy Award winners, but they had no sponsorship. So just shout out to you for landing the sponsorship for the podcast for the year. Wonderful job. Wonderful job.
Thank you. And a special shout out to DeQuanda for helping me secure that.
She can sell air to the atmosphere. For those of you who don't know her, she's quite effective. But yes, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but please go on.
No, of course. To give our listeners a little context, we just got back from New Orleans Thursday, Friday. And we were in New Orleans for the Associated Chambers of Commerce Executives.
Yeah, Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, absolutely.
Their annual conference, annual convention. They move locations every year. This year it was in New Orleans, and we had a great time just, connecting with other. Bobby connected with every person in that conference. Everybody knew Bobby by the end of the week.
Cheater code. Many of them knew me. Quite a few of them have known me for some years now. So it's just kind of like family getting back together. But I will say this, it was great being among our, kind of feels like a fraternity of sorts, these chambers of commerce. And some of those sessions felt a little bit like therapy because we were dealing with some of the same challenges and opportunities. But nevertheless, yeah.
Yeah, let's actually go there for a minute. What was something that you took away from our time and our sessions that we went to?
Well, one of the things I took away was, number one, that economic development is hard, right? Mm-hmm. There's a calculus to it. And there are things that folks in our space have had to navigate and business leaders have had to navigate. And we just think for the last couple of years, just think about it. We can go back to the economic downturn of, a decade ago or however long that's been. We can, or even before that goes back much longer. We can think about, let's not forget about COVID. I mean, just think about the magic tricks and the way businesses had to adjust and change their business models to even survive through the pandemic. And then just recently, there have been a couple of challenges like with tariffs and with the war in Iran, or with Iran, I should say. It's been quite a bit. So businesses continuing to be nimble, notwithstanding also the introduction of this thing, a little bitty thing. I don't know if you've heard of it. Not Allen Iverson. Shout out to Philadelphia. I know LeBron and Jaylen Brown are coming that way, but not Allen Iverson. A little AI, artificial intelligence. So the way, again, businesses are having to change their model. So in the midst of all of that, being able to be nimble as chambers of commerce to continue to recruit businesses and retain businesses, but also what needs to be done to help grow businesses. So I think that if nothing else, I think even a better appreciation for what we all have been through and experienced over the last several years is pretty remarkable. Sometimes you can be so busy doing a thing that you don't recognize what you're actually doing. I think this is a point of reflection for me, at least, to just recognize how difficult and challenging it's been for the last few years.
As somebody kind of newer to the industry and having only been in the chamber world for almost 2 years now, it was interesting to me that to hear some of the other chambers in cities across the country with different populations and different demographics just express they're having some of the same issues that our community is having and our business community is having, and hearing their solutions to the problems and kind of being able to take their ideas and their tactics back with me. And just, I mean, it did two things for me. Kind of, we're not the only chamber, we're not the only city that has problems.
Right. Absolutely.
Everybody, every city, every town has something.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily the same or to the extent as another city, but everybody has something.
Absolutely.
But then just having the creative and innovative minds that are out there and the solutions that these people have come up with, that was really interesting to me. And I'm then start to think, what can I do? What can we do back here, back in Memphis? And to implement this in our own way for our community, because it's obviously not a one-size-fit-all solution for every issue or anything.
No, it's not. I mean, candidly, one of the joys of being there at ACCE in New Orleans, I might add, and I need to give a shout out to our colleague Courtney, whose brother-in-law and sister own a little restaurant in Treme called Gabrielle. It's probably the best top to bottom levels in terms of from the appetizer to the soup on down the line, and then the dessert. It was like
the dessert.
It's one of the best culinary experiences I've had in New Orleans. I've been going back and forth from New Orleans for quite a while and had great meals and great restaurants, notwithstanding. I will say this, though. It did also remind me of this. The pleasure I had, I was going to say, was we were Chamber of the Year last year when we were announced in Philadelphia, and we were in category 4. Category 4 is like the largest category, right? So we're in like the big city chamber or the metro chamber kind of a category. There are 3 others, as you might figure out from the number 4. Well, here's the thing. I had the opportunity to look at and understand that, shucks, while we are wanting to grow and learn lessons, we are also kind of pace setting and people are learning from us. I had any number of conversations of folks wanting to figure out how to come our way. And I was also privileged to lead a session where we talked about this anti-growth sentiment and some of the experiences that we've had and just talk through it. It felt like therapy. But again, I'm also reminding myself that even in that moment, I'm giving some pretty good insight to folks who are kind of gleaning some of these lessons learned and some of the things that they could do differently. And it kind of felt like throughout the conference in my conversations, and I'm a talkative kind of guy in these sessions, that people were taking notes and writing down. So it just puts back into context for us that while we're learning lessons, people are also learning lessons from us.
Yes, definitely. Let's talk about Chamber of the Year. So last year we were in Philadelphia and we won Chamber of the Year.
Woo woo.
What was that process like? Tell us from your perspective.
Well, from my perspective, it was pressure packed because as much as Taylor Ann and she helped to lead that process and all that went with it in terms of the document preparation and then the communications team, and Amy, who's the chief communications officer, leads this great team, and Taylor's on, and Julian and Courtney, who's on my team and Amy's team jointly, and Diamond and others who kind of that process, but Taylor Ann was kind of like the quarterback for that and helped to prepare us for the interview. But the application itself, as robust and expansive as it was, it only accounted for some percentage of it. I just know I went into that interview knowing that it counted for like 2/3 of the whole thing was down to the interview. And so everything went well with that. I'll say this, as difficult as I thought the interview was last year, judging was even more challenging this year. I said that when I announced the winner at the ceremony. It's because we had some rock stars in there, right? And I want to, one Spartanburg was one of them, Mobile another, and then also Des Moines. And Des Moines ended up coming out on top. But let me tell you, that was down to the wire type of thing. Quite frankly, to the point that we recognize coming out of our, can I say this? Well, it's over. Coming out of our judging, we recognize that it was going to come down to, because the folks at ACCE, they chimed in terms of the judging, and then they also chimed in terms of how they rated the applications. So we knew that we were not going to know who won that night, right? So, I mean, it really was close, but it was a great time, great opportunity. And you talk about lessons learned. You talk about lessons, man, to listen to people. I'm like, wow. And some of it, Taylor, you got to think about it this way. It's not so much what people are doing that we aren't doing. It's how they have memorialized it and put it in a strategy and put it on a plan and put it on the calendar. So some of the things that we might be doing in an offhanded, not necessarily offhanded, but in a way that is not as spelled out, they're doing it in a way where they've built great strategy and implementation around it. So, yeah. But it was a great time this year and great to and shout out once again to those 3 finalists.
Yeah, so I'm going to give a little more context to our listeners and kind of give them an idea of really what the application entailed and then leading up to that interview, what that was like. It's an extensive application. You have to qualify, first of all.
You do.
And we do that through dynamic chamber benchmarking, which takes into account things like our membership size, our revenue, our city size, our city demographics. You have to qualify, and that's kind of how you figure out what category you're in. First of all, you have to do it to even be eligible for Chamber of the Year.
Exactly.
It's an optional thing that ACCE puts out, but if you want to qualify to actually even get the application, you have to do that survey. And then that survey puts you in a category. And because of our revenue and our size and membership, we were in category 4. And the application is pretty much the same across the board, but you have to give some background information, what your chamber is, who you are, what you believe in, where you are, who runs the chamber, what your board is like, what your membership makeup is like. And then you have to answer some other basic questions, like one of them was, why do you think your chamber should be Chamber of the Year? And you only have about 300 words to explain these 4 questions. And it's not necessarily easy to get 300 words, whether that's, you have too many or you have too little. You're like, I got 1 sentence. We need to be Chamber of the Year because we work really hard.
Right.
Right. Or it's like, we need to be Chamber of the Year. Right. And then you list all of these reasons, but you can't. You really have to narrow it down.
Yeah.
And then once you do that part, you have to do your program synopsis. There's 2 of them for larger chambers, I think.
Yeah, it's 2.
It's 3 and 4, or maybe it's 2, 3, and 4 who have to do 2 synopsis, and then 1 has to do 1 program synopsis. But that's basically
the big thing you have to brag on.
Yeah.
What are the 2? If you had to tell somebody, we're Chamber of the Year because of this program, or we're Chamber of the Year because of this strategy. So it's the 2 big things that you would call yourself bragging on.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it's 2 programs, initiatives, strategies, whatever you want to say, that really made an impact. And our application, and I don't know if our listeners really are aware of what it was and what we submitted, but we submitted our what was then called America's River Crossing, but now it's King's Crossing, the I-55 bridge that you and your team worked so diligently on.
Right. Have we ever told that story before on the podcast?
Honestly,
have you ever shared that story?
I don't know if we have.
Yeah, I got to tell that story because, I mean, we're not at the point where we're on the other end of it, and you can't really just say it But the long and the short of it, and it's probably one of the better stories of like what working across the aisle can look like, or working across state lines can look like. The long and the short of it, we had back in 2021, we had a shutdown of the I-40 bridge. It was a shutdown of traffic underneath the bridge for 3 months. It was a crack, a structural fault, and a shutdown of traffic over the bridge for 3 months. Guess where everyone went? Everyone went to what we call the I-55 bridge, which was the old bridge, right? So the new bridge is the I-40 bridge, which is many, many years old. And then the old bridge, a lot of traffic on that bridge. And it brought attention to the fact that, hey, we need greater capacity across the Mississippi River. So fast forward, we get a chance to actually, and mind you, we have a transportation committee that's been saying that this is a dream project, not just a dream project, something we need to work toward because given the distribution and logistics. Long story short, we have to go through a few things. Number one, infrastructure has to get passed at the federal level. It does. Bipartisan infrastructure bill. Shout out to Congressman Steve Cohen, who played a critical role and serves on the transportation committee. Number two, what needs to happen at the state level is the state need to create enabling legislation. Mind you, Steve Cohen is a Democrat. Our state legislation, our administration is Republican. Transportation Modernization Act was passed, which would allow for the buckets of funding that could help support the kind of matching funds needed for a bridge. Then number three, we had to work across with Arkansas. So they put 200 to 300 million, 200 to 300 million. Same thing with the state of Tennessee. Bam, we got a $400 million grant. But going through the process, we were able to, with the support of Bill Donovan, Butch Ely, who's my buddy, the former deputy governor / commissioner of transportation. We were like, put us in the game, coach. We were able to help rewrite the application, and that's my team. That's the economic development, specifically the transportation committee. I should mention them first of all, and then also our GMERGE, which is our economic development, economic research group here at the chamber. We were able to get in there and rewrite the application, and we went from zeros to heroes because we were able to get that $400 million. So tremendously happy about how that worked out in terms of us working together with all of our partners, including the Tennessee Department of Transportation, who was the lead organization on applying for that federal grant.
And I think that right there is one of the things that, helped us secure the win was the Chamber of the Year awards puts an emphasis on chambers who are impacting their community in more ways than one, who are influencing change and convening the right people and are playing across lines that have been drawn for whatever reason. And it was an example like that set us apart, I think, is because we weren't just dealing with Memphis people. We were dealing with state people. We were dealing with Arkansas. We were dealing with federal people. Some sort of stock in the bridge, something they wanted to gain from it. And we were able to make that all work together. Obviously, it was a team effort. We could not have done it on our own.
Absolutely. And it's also an example of, at this time when there can be such acrimonious debate, and when you see Democrats and Republicans and sometimes it's gotten into our politics, the part I really loved was the idea that you had a Republican administration with the state with a Democratic member of Congress leading the charge. And quite frankly, at the time, a Democratic administration, because where we started was during the Biden administration, and just that synergy. And then also Republican administration in Arkansas. It's just all really came together. It's one of those things that, I hadn't written a resume in a long time, but it's one of those things I would put as a exhibit A on my resume in terms of how we were able to work together on that.
Definitely. And so then our second program we did was Digital Delta, and we talked about the impact of the growing technology ecosystem here in Memphis and the jobs that provides and how that plays into our Prosper Memphis 2030, which is our strategic plan. And so we had to find supporting documents. We had to write storytelling narrative, but again, all word count limited. Listen, we were scratching out words, and then we'd scratch too many, and we were like, this isn't telling a story. And so we were rewriting and editing and writing and re-editing, and it was an interesting, exciting, but taxing process.
Yeah.
We submit our application. We hear back about a month later that we are finalists, and they chose 3 finalists in each category.
Yep.
And that's when we got into the interview, and that's when you came into play. And we prepped you. We went over every ounce of that application. We went through and talked about the core principles that ACCE was looking for, those what they call their Horizon initiatives, which are those, values and characteristics that they believe chambers should exhibit. And then y'all went in and you did that interview, and then we won.
And let me tell you, and somebody had the nerve to tell me at the celebration, had the nerve to say, well, y'all giving up the award for the new winners this year. I said, I beg your pardon. This is like a Grammy. You brag on a Grammy throughout the duration of your career, and it appears in your obituary upon your transition. This isn't like one of those things where we're handing it to somebody else. Our trophy is still here. We just happen to be the Chamber of the Year for 2025, and somebody just won it for 2026, but it does not negate the fact that we did that, right? So to the extent that we can't apply for 3 years or whatever, listen, we will forever. It's not us passing it on as much as it is just us recognizing that, hey, the calendar changes, but nobody's taking away 2025. That's what that is.
2025 happened. Could you take us back to what it was like to win, and kind of that moment, and maybe the nerve, the excitement, what that was like?
Yeah, I just honestly, my proclivity for making things simple, or saying them a different way, or making sure people understood. I think the thing is about impact, right? When we talk about what the chamber and the role, so many chambers, it's such background stuff, right? But what we were able to pull off in 2025 is it changed the landscape, not just for Memphis or West Tennessee, but for the state and for the region, right? And so here we are. The 3 biggest economic development projects in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. As much as, I think about the thrill of us winning, I just think about all the other chambers and all my friends from across the country where, in fact, shout out to my buddies, Michigan West Coast Chamber of Commerce. Those are my partners, Jody and Britt and the crew. I think the thing of it is that there's just so much great work that they are doing that is important at a time when people devalue or undervalue the importance of that work. I can tell you right now, I see too often where people are wanting government to do more and not recognizing that government is limited in funds to do more. And that ties directly to the presence of businesses and a thriving business community. You want to show me a thriving community, I'll show you a thriving business community. You want to show me a struggling community, I'll show you a struggling business community. So I think that once again, I'm just, taking away, I won't say necessarily stand in awe, but I'm just appreciative of that work, mostly unrecognized. There's so many people who will never win one of those awards, but it's important work that they're doing for their respective communities.
Definitely. What do you think was the impact of us winning Chamber of the Year in 2025?
I think that one of the big things to consider is this. Sometimes it requires that type of recognition for people to truly appreciate what you've done at a local level, right? National recognition, being named to some national list or national recognition sometimes just makes the local folks have to take another look and see, and to be regarded by your peers, because you can't just, say anything to any of these other chambers because they're amazing. No, these are other folks who know the work, understand the work, and for them to say, that you're Chamber of the Year. I think that recognition has helped us to be regarded in another way, in an enhanced way by many of our local partners and even local citizens who at some level, I don't believe really came to, at some level, did not really appreciate the work that we had done and the ways in which we've been able to kind of transform the economy here locally just with some of these wins we've had, notwithstanding. Oh, by the way, a bridge to boot. So,
yeah. And I think it's the application is not judged by just anybody. It's judged by former winners, people who have won.
Right.
And some of these winners have won more than once.
Right.
They're from chambers larger than ours. And so to have the recognition that we are among these winners who are also doing great things, and then have other people from other chambers who didn't apply or haven't had the opportunity to apply say they're doing great things too, it just means something different. And then kind of to what you were saying, here in Memphis, especially, just working at the chamber, it's sometimes easy to fall into a pattern of this is just how it is.
Right.
We just, this is what we do.
Right.
And not step back and realize that the work we are doing is making an impact. I mean, we talked about the bridge. Like, that work right there doesn't just impact our businesses, but it impacts our people. And even after winning Chamber of the Year, we came back from Philadelphia to Memphis and had the excitement and support of our investors. They were saying, like, we see what y'all have done, and finally other people are seeing it, or you've gotten more recognition from industry professionals. And so even on that level, they have supported us and encouraged our work and encouraged us to continue making change and doing transformative things, which just says a lot about the business community here and the importance that it has. And I know we've said it throughout this episode that they have on Memphis and what we do as a city.
Here's the thing about it. You come to learn is I've seen a lot over my years of working in the public sector and in partnership with the public sector. There are just too many people to name who are behind the scenes making our community better. For every one elected official that you might see and the talking point you might hear from a mayor or a council person or a member of the state legislature, I can tell you there are 100 people behind the scenes working just as hard and doing work that's transformative, right? I think the business community, in many respects, and many of our business leaders, like Mr. Smith, was such a wonderful example of how Memphis has come to expect and anticipate a certain amount of community investment from leaders based upon seeing an example of somebody like a Mr. Fred Smith, a Pitt Hyde. It's a hard thing in Memphis not to be a business doing well and not be invested in the community,
right? Because
the standard that's been set is so anti that very position of not being invested. So I'll just say this, end of the day, so much great work being done by so many, and our business leaders deserve attention. And I think that even that award was recognition of their hard work, as much as it is of staff and team members. It's a recognition of their hard work. It's been a great ride, and so I think ACCE was a grand success this year. I also believe the opportunity for us following up, learning lessons. I have a number of chambers who've committed to, hey, they want to come to Memphis and webinars and things that are coming on the backside of that convention there in New Orleans is very encouraging. I'm looking forward to those connections.
Yeah. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us on the Talk Chamber.
Well, thank you, Taylor Ann. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Talk Chamber. We are so glad you're here. Today, Bobby and I reflected on our 2025 ACCE Chamber of the Year win and what that means for Memphis and our business community. If you enjoyed this episode or learned a valuable piece of information, share this episode with a friend or maybe even a colleague. Subscribe to the Talk Chamber to keep up with the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. Follow us on social media at Memphis Chamber, and we'll see you next time.